Across a dimly lit restaurant table, my wife stared straight into my eyes and announced she was returning to her ex. Oh, and she was claiming half of everything I had built. Strangely, I simply nodded and told her to gather her belongings that very night. She froze for a few seconds, then gave this icy smile, convinced she had already triumphed. What she had no clue about, what almost no one knew except my close friend Tyler and my attorney, was that for the past 15 years I had carefully constructed something entirely out of her reach. Something invisible and unbreakable. It all began 7 years before I ever met her, when I witnessed my brother get completely ruined in his divorce. He was a solid, hard-working engineer who married his university sweetheart. After a decade together, she walked away, taking the house, the vehicles, half his retirement savings, plus saddling him with ongoing alimony payments. Essentially, he ended up laboring to support her fresh start with her gym trainer. I can still picture sitting in his cramped, musty apartment that first month after the papers were signed, watching him survive on instant noodles because that was all his budget allowed. Right then, I silently vowed I would never become that broken man. I'm an accountant by profession. Maybe it seems dull to some, but it trains you to spot numbers, recognize patterns, and understand exactly how people lose everything financially when they fail to safeguard themselves. My closest friend Tyler is a forensic accountant, the type who uncovers concealed assets during messy divorces and fraud investigations. Over time, he revealed tactics that would shock anyone. He introduced me to what he nicknamed the invisible fortress, a way one partner can arrange finances during marriage so the other believes they share equal access, while in reality they legally control almost nothing. He shared stories of men who thought they were creating a shared future, only to discover they had unknowingly funded their wife's secret lover's lifestyle. So when I first met my wife, let's call her Sarah, 15 years ago, I was already planning several steps forward. I realized that might sound detached or cynical, as though I entered the relationship anticipating its collapse. But that's not accurate. I didn't predict failure. I simply refused to be caught defenseless if things went wrong. Before our wedding, I formed an LLC, transferred the bulk of my premarital assets into it, kept meticulous records proving what was mine beforehand. And yes, I requested a prenuptial agreement. She signed it casually, without even glancing through it, insisting she trusted me completely and that money wasn't important compared to our love. Back then, I felt a twinge of guilt, wondering if I was overly cautious. That guilt vanished instantly during our final restaurant conversation 15 years later. We created what appeared to be a typical, contented life together. A comfortable home, solid careers, and we raised our daughter Lily, now 19 and away at university. For much of those 15 years, I actually believed my precautions had been unnecessary, because Sarah seemed genuinely happy, devoted, and fully committed for the long run. Roughly 3 years back, subtle shifts began appearing. Nothing huge, just her phone suddenly requiring a password when it never had before, more frequent late nights at work, girls' evenings that occurred almost weekly. I stayed calm, made no accusations. Instead, I started observing closely. I quietly retained a private investigator, not to trap her but to confirm whether my instincts were correct. They were. She had been involved with her former boyfriend, let's call him Ryan, for nearly 2 years. Secret meetings at his place, weekend getaways she claimed were professional conferences. The classic pattern. Ryan was the guy she dated before me, an aspiring business dreamer who never quite succeeded but always had grand plans. The investigators' findings showed Sarah had been supporting him financially, pulling money from our shared account to fund him. Over those 2 years, more than $80,000 had been transferred in small chunks, sometimes noted as friend loans, sometimes family gifts, but every cent landed with Ryan. I kept silent, revealed nothing. I simply activated what Tyler and I had named the never again safeguard. Every layer of protection I had established over 15 years sprang into action simultaneously. I relocated funds, secured accounts, strengthened the LLC setup, ensured every asset was clearly classified as separate property, prepared legal records of those transfers to Ryan, and handled it all while still returning home each evening, still saying goodbye with a kiss each morning, still acting like the unaware husband. 5 years earlier, I had purchased a modest apartment complex as an investment through one of my LLCs, 8 units in a solid area, nothing extravagant. I rarely focused on specific tenants, since a property manager handled daily operations. But when the investigator shared Ryan's address, I checked my ownership records and nearly chuckled. Ryan had been renting one of my units for years at an unusually low rate inherited from the prior owner. Sarah had been carrying on her affair inside a building I owned without ever realizing it. Then came that evening at the restaurant, an Italian spot she chose, saying we needed to discuss our future. I already knew the script because the investigator had captured her telling Ryan she was finally prepared to leave and collect her share. She sipped her wine slowly, then delivered the news. She was leaving for Ryan and intended to take half of everything. She said it with a smug grin, as if announcing a fun trip. I studied her face and saw a stranger, someone who had spent 2 years deceiving me while plotting my financial downfall. Calmly, I replied, "Fine, pack your things and go tonight." She had clearly anticipated pleading, arguments, tears. None came. When we returned home, she launched into a theatrical outburst, shouting that she deserved more, that Ryan truly valued her, that she had sacrificed her prime years for me. I sat quietly on the sofa, completely composed, and simply pointed to the door. She stormed out that night with only clothes and a few personal items. I said nothing more and let her leave. The instant her car disappeared down the driveway, I phoned Tyler. It was time. The safeguard was fully engaged, and the plan we had prepared for over a decade was about to deliver results she could never have foreseen. The following morning, as I sipped coffee in the kitchen, my phone erupted with calls. The first was from Sarah's sister, Emily, an attorney, who launched into threats about crushing me in court, promising lifelong alimony payments, insisting Sarah deserved it all after enduring me for 15 years. I listened patiently until she finished, then asked one quiet question. Had Sarah mentioned the post-nuptial agreement we executed 8 years earlier? The sudden silence on the line spoke volumes. 8 years into our marriage, as I reorganized some business holdings, I had asked Sarah to sign an updated agreement, explaining it was routine for tax and estate reasons. She signed without reviewing it, just like the original prenup. That document strengthened all existing protections and explicitly designated certain assets as untouchable separate property. Emily obviously had no knowledge of it, meaning Sarah had either forgotten or dismissed it as irrelevant. I could almost hear Emily's mental calculations shifting before she abruptly ended the call. I knew then their whole approach had crumbled before it truly began. 2 days later, Sarah attempted an emergency filing for temporary financial support and account access, but she submitted it lacking proper evidence, without demonstrating genuine need, and without referencing any of the binding agreements. The judge denied it almost immediately and began questioning whether her attorney had conducted basic due diligence. Emily stood in court, essentially conceding she had proceeded on assumptions rather than solid facts. Then came the infamous bank incident, which Tyler later said became folklore among his forensic colleagues. Sarah marched into our bank accompanied by Emily, demanding full access to every account with an air of entitlement, declaring she was legally owed half as a spouse. The branch manager calmly retrieved the records, explained that her name appeared on very few accounts, that the joint ones were already frozen due to pending proceedings. And here's the detail that made Tyler burst out laughing. The manager produced copies of documents Sarah herself had signed over the years confirming the separate property structure. Sarah stood frozen, staring at her own signatures, while Emily's expression shifted from assured to stunned in moments. According to the manager's later deposition, Sarah began shouting that she had been deceived, that she never grasped what she was signing, that it couldn't possibly be valid. Emily had to practically pull her out while other customers witnessed the entire scene. Someone even shared the story in a local online group, amplifying her embarrassment. But the most satisfying moment, the one that still brings a quiet smile, occurred about a week after Sarah left, when she and Ryan learned an unexpected truth about his apartment. He had enjoyed that comfortable unit at discounted rent for years, thanks to the previous owner's arrangement. Sarah moved in with him, believing she had found security. Neither realized I had acquired the entire building 5 years prior as an investment. Once she settled in, she breached the lease clause banning extended unauthorized occupants. My property manager, unaware of any personal context and simply enforcing rules, issued a standard 30-day notice to vacate. Ryan exploded, threatened legal action, insisted he had tenant rights, but the lease was explicit and the violation was clear. When he claimed personal retaliation, my attorney pointed out the consistent enforcement policy. Every similar violation in the past 5 years had resulted in the same outcome. They were gone within 3 weeks. Neighbors later shared that a loud argument erupted in the parking lot during their move-out, Sarah screaming at Ryan that he had promised to provide for her and now she was essentially homeless. Ryan shouting back that it wasn't his fault and perhaps she should have verified her divorce position before torching her marriage. A teenager in the complex recorded part of it and posted it on TikTok. It spread locally as a viral example of poetic justice, devastating Sarah since she had always cared deeply about appearances. Around then, our daughter Lily began her own quiet research. She had sensed her mother's odd behavior for years but stayed silent. She examined Sarah's social media, spotted inconsistencies between posted locations and claimed whereabouts, uncovered messages revealing the affair had lasted longer than suspected. Lily grew completely distant from her mother. One evening she called me, explaining she had uncovered proof that Sarah had been plotting her exit for at least 3 years. Old posts about deserving more, about discovering true happiness. Lily said she refused to keep pretending her mom was the wronged party. That phone call pained me more than anything Sarah did. I never wanted our daughter forced to pick sides or lose faith in her mother. Sarah attempted to repair things with Lily, sending lengthy messages about the complexities of adult relationships and how I had never truly loved her. Lily simply forwarded screenshots to me, with notes analyzing the manipulation techniques she recognized from her college psychology courses. At 19, she had developed sharper insight into people than I possessed at 35. The final dramatic moment arrived when Sarah appeared uninvited at the house, apparently believing she still belonged there. I wasn't home, but security footage captured her trying her old key, useless since I changed the locks the day she left, then banging on the door and shouting. A neighbor, assuming a burglary, phoned the police. When officers arrived, Sarah insisted she resided there and I had illegally barred her. They reviewed property records, confirmed the home belonged to my LLC with no mention of her as owner or occupant, and informed her she was trespassing and must depart immediately or face arrest. She left after more yelling about illegality and her sister's legal power. The officers later told me they encounter these cases often. People wreck their marriages, then act shocked when real repercussions follow. That evening Tyler texted that Sarah and Ryan had received formal lawsuit notices. Things were about to intensify dramatically. We had shifted from protection to pursuit, and Sarah remained oblivious to the storm ahead. The lawsuit against Ryan became the decisive strike. When his attorney reviewed the complaint, he reportedly told Ryan this went far beyond typical divorce fallout. It was deliberate financial accountability. We pursued him not merely for the affair, but for tortious interference with a marital relationship, conspiracy to defraud, and unjust enrichment from the $80,000 Sarah channeled to him from marital funds over 2 years. Tyler conducted a thorough forensic trace using statements, transfer logs, and even their exchanged messages discussing the money. We could follow every dollar and demonstrate Ryan knowingly accepted marital assets while urging Sarah to abandon the marriage. His attorney attempted to claim ignorance of the fund's origin, but we possessed texts where Sarah plainly stated she was using our joint account, photos of them together with her wedding ring visible, receipts from celebrations of their reunion anniversary. Ultimately, the lawyer explained to Ryan that trial was unwinnable. No jury would favor a man who knowingly assisted a married woman's theft from her husband while residing in that husband's rental unit. The settlement demand, $275,000 plus covering all legal costs. Ryan panicked, insisting he lacked the funds, threatening countersuits for harassment. His counsel quickly quashed that, warning that a trial could double the amount and possibly trigger criminal fraud charges. While Ryan struggled, Emily faced her own disaster. Every legal motion she submitted was rejected. Every position she argued collapsed. The judge began probing whether she had adequately examined the marital agreements before accepting the case. Soon after, a bar association complaint regarding her professional competence was lodged, not by me, but by another attorney who reviewed the filings as an ethical matter. Once initiated, Emily's standing eroded as colleagues discussed how she had entered what appeared a guaranteed-win divorce, only to emerge empty-handed and facing potential discipline. Sarah's existence unraveled publicly. Unable to afford decent housing without funds or employment, she had quit her job months earlier, expecting a huge payout. Ryan evicted her after the lawsuit landed, blaming her for dragging legal trouble into his world. She ended up in Emily's basement, a situation Emily resented but felt obligated to accept. Local whispers were merciless. Acquaintances shared sightings of her at discount stores, buying inexpensive groceries and wine, looking utterly defeated. Someone even created a Facebook page supposedly for financially challenged divorcees. But it quickly became a place to mock Sarah after public court filings revealed the full context of her choices. Lily cut off contact entirely after Sarah's final attempt at manipulation, a lengthy letter claiming I had been financially controlling and abusive. Lily replied with a single text. She had reviewed every legal document, seen every signature, and understood Sarah had voluntarily relinquished claims over 15 years because she never anticipated facing consequences. That message reportedly shattered Sarah more than any judge's ruling, as it stripped away any hope of regaining her daughter's respect through excuses or tactics. The concluding court session felt almost routine given how weakened Sarah's case had become. Even Emily recommended accepting the offered terms, meaning Sarah received precisely what the prenup and postnup allowed: limited personal belongings, zero spousal maintenance, no entitlement to assets designated as separate before or during the marriage. She exited the courtroom with essentially nothing beyond obligations and public shame. Ryan settled for the full demanded amount, forced to borrow heavily and liquidate possessions. Last reports indicated he was juggling 2 jobs to chip away at the debt, insisting to anyone who listened that he had been framed, though no one bought it given the mountain of proof. Roughly 6 months post-finalization, Sarah made one last attempt, phoning to ask if we could discuss possibly reconciling, admitting she had erred and now grasped what she had discarded. I told her plainly, she hadn't lost anything accidentally. She had deliberately discarded it all, and her only real mistake was assuming there would be no fallout. Lily switched her college focus to financial planning and asset protection, directly motivated by witnessing how I shielded myself. She said she wants to guide others in avoiding the devastation that unprotected relationships can cause. Tyler hosted a small gathering when it all concluded, jokingly calling it the Sarah Chronicles Party. A few close friends joined us as we reflected on the entire sequence. One remark from that night became my favorite takeaway. Unconditional love should never demand unconditional financial exposure. I didn't end the marriage because I stopped loving Sarah. I ended it because she chose betrayal after 15 years, pursuing an illusion with her ex while expecting me to finance her departure. The sole reason I emerged whole was learning from my brother's collapse that optimism alone isn't protection, and trust doesn't equal recklessness. Sarah now resides in a modest rental, working retail from what I've heard. Emily largely stepped back from practicing law after the bar scrutiny harmed her credibility. Ryan continues making monthly payments on his settlement, a burden that will linger for years. I retained every asset, every investment, every element of the life I established. I achieved that not through malice or revenge, but through preparation, because everyone else assumed love meant leaving oneself exposed. That preparation separated my outcome from my brother's, turning potential ruin into security. I would choose exactly the same path again without a second thought. Safeguarding yourself isn't about anticipating disaster. It's about ensuring you won't be destroyed should disaster arrive. What are your thoughts on this experience? Share below.